Hello again, and welcome to my Super C Minimalist No Damage series of videos. This is an all-in-one bundle for those of you guys who prefer to marathon the whole thing instead of watching separate videos back to back. Super C is a heinous game that doesn't care about crushing your spirit. There's countless ways and reasons to die in this game. The main reason being that every stage is on a sort of global timer. One little detail out of place and your entire synchronization with the stage is gone, and this makes almost every Contra game a mercilessly punishing experience. This game is a beast of its own on casual play, even when people take damage and use the upgrades and their various benefits, such as zoning, environmental damage, and firepower. However, in a minimalist run, button mashing practically becomes mandatory. You can't stay anywhere for too long, mainly because most of the enemy spawns are infinite, and you'll be overwhelmed sooner or later. And that's not even mentioning all the obstacles, such as the global timer being constantly affected by the placement and timing of your actions. I said in my hardcore uprising commentary that I wouldn't do any more challenges that involve button mashing, but here I am, going at it again. Button mashing will be a common theme throughout this commentary, because it makes so many of the impossible moments possible. I know it sounds weird, but it'll make sense when you see it later on. There are times where I prefer pelleting my way through the enemies using the default weapon because it's a simple and concentrated attack despite its barely sufficient damage output. Stage 2 is one of these arcade-style top-down levels that probably inspired the twin-stick shooter genre in the first place. This is the one video where everything that had to go wrong in a successful run did. But I wanted to keep it by virtue of it being a successful run of the stage. Your character moves too slow for you to dodge all the attacks by gut reaction alone. There's study and timing involved here. In fact, a lot of speedrunners fail their runs on levels like these, simply because of how much of an oddball they are if you screw up in the slightest. It's recoverable, but it's a nightmare to plow your way through if your timing is off. The bullets are no longer spawning as intended, and their timing is entirely chaotic, making it even harder to react to everything that's coming for you. The controls in those levels are tanky, and it's even worse if you play the arcade version. I still love those levels for what they are. They're fun, arcade-type semi-minigames, but they're also the cheapest and most frustrating part of the game because every so often you'll die for reasons that were far beyond your control. And this stage is only a conceptual evidence of what I'm talking about. Wait for stage 6 if you want to see something truly frightening. Stage 3 pisses me off in all sorts of ways, and it's difficult for me to talk about. Just looking at the screen right now pisses me off. I want to talk about the barrier cannon before it disappears. Button mashing isn't enough to destroy it before its projectiles rain down on you. I had to figure out a way to keep my pace and the stage global timer on par with each other. The only way I could make it through was by pelleting it for as long as possible and then jump over him and continue shooting downward in some vain hope that I wouldn't die by jumping on it. I have to give it everything I've got on each attempt, and also keep in mind that this needs to happen properly at the start of each run. This leaves room for unspeakable amounts of frustration when your hands are hurting from it all. Remember that I'm not using any turbo controller for this, and for some reason the screen capture does not, capture all the bullets and projectiles that appear on the screen. My button mashing and the rate of shots fired are actually a lot more intense than what is shown in this video, or in any of the videos for that matter. Anyway, back on track. If the stage global timer is where it's supposed to be, the part that leads you to the mini-boss will serve as a small breathing room if you learn the sort of choreography needed to get through. If you fail enough times, and you will, it'll simply become a matter of muscle memory, to the point that you'll be on some sort of autopilot until the mini-boss. Speaking of the mini-boss, he's a good tension relief for the absolute atrocity that leads us to the stage's end boss. When the ground crumbles beneath you, the input of your jump is eaten. There's no warning, no indication that it's going on. It's just an absolute nightmare of a stage segment, and it's really unfair. If you watch any sub-14 speedruns of this game, you'll see that the optimal strat is to skip the crumbling ground and simply stick to the right edge of the screen while shooting. But at the time of recording this video, I had absolutely no idea this was even possible. And also, the level of stress and exhaustion I felt when making it that far into a successful run made me unable to look twice or even consider an alternative. This was it. It was the strat I had found, and that's what it was. The amount of runs I lost to this eclectic mess really pisses me off. I know that it sounds ridiculous, especially when you consider that I made this harder than I should have, but looking back at this footage, I'm kinda glad I ended up doing it the way I did. And as for the end boss, well, I remember being so exhausted at the end that I forgot some stupid self-imposed rule that I decided on back then, to destroy all parts of the boss before destroying the actual boss completely. I almost fucked that up and destroyed it when I suddenly realized what was going on. I don't want to talk about this too much. Just talking about the stage at all, it feels horrible and I can't wait to move on. Fuck the stage, fuck the ground crumbles, fuck it all to hell. Fuck you, stage 3. Christ. Bubbles. Fucking bubbles. That's it. See you for stage 5. Jokes aside, this is arguably the best level in the entire game. It wears its identity crisis on its sleeve by making you believe it's yet another horizontal level, and turns out to be anything but that. This is the first climb of the game and the most savage one too. Ignoring the bubbles at the start, there is so much shit to kill you it's not even funny. I know I say this on almost every stage, but you're not seeing all the bullets and projectiles here. This stage is a show, and it will kick your ass until you learn its dirty tricks. This isn't like stage 3 where there are two separate parts of the stage that are capable of deciding whether or not you succeed. This is, and always was, a good example of what makes Contra good. It's a level charged with action and constant movement, at the exception of a certain bit during the elevator segment, but I think it's a welcome breathing room before the boss fight. I think that the best part about this level is the feeling that you're constantly doing something. If not, you're preparing for what's next by positioning yourself or by reacting to the enemy spawns. The bubbles are what causes the most grief in this entire game, and I'd like to elaborate as to why. For some reason, bubbles in video games are some of the worst, most haunting and terrifying enemies you can ever encounter. And in this game in particular, they have very good homing by themselves. So, as you understand by now, when there's 2 or 3 simultaneously trying to hit you, it quickly becomes an overwhelming game of cat and mouse. And honestly, minimalist or not, if you're not expecting them, if you don't know exactly where they are or how to react to them, or if you were slightly distracted by something else, this, in most cases, guarantees a failure. It's such that you need to go and experience it yourself. A video like this where not all the projectiles and bullets are captured, and also where this is a successful run, cannot do their absolute terror any justice. One thing that needs to be mentioned is how clever the color scheme is for this level. The green is exclusive to platform and borders, or just about any truly important element of the stage. There's a dark blue for detail in the sprite work, and the black background allows you to truly focus on what's going on. This could have been a massive mess had they not chosen this route, and this is how you can see that a level has been tested more than enough times. The background probably wasn't so spotless in the game's developmental stages, and they must have come to the conclusion that this would have created artificial difficulty in a game where it's clearly not needed. Let me rectify that. There isn't a single game where artificial difficulty is needed, so fuck that. Last but not least is the boss. It confused me then, it confuses me now, and it will most likely continue until I drag this and many other games with me into hell. This boss is the front face, the absolute poster child of a global timer. After doing it a few times, you come to realize that the entire thing is rhythm-based. It's entirely about timing, more than any other aspect of the entire game. If one step is out of place, you can't move or jump fast enough to dodge its attacks, and it's entirely your fault for fucking up the rhythm. It takes forever to die, or so it feels. It's not so much a tanky boss as it's simply a matter of it having so many parts. 9. I counted. It has 9 parts, and I have no life. Great stage, great design, great asset to this game overall. This, to me, really stands as an example of what made old Contra games so much fun. This level really kicks ass. Here we are. This is the hardest thing Super C has to offer. I love it. I certainly love it to death, but there's no way I'll be able to cover everything in such a short video. This is the most chaotic stage in the entire game. It is an absolute beast on its own. This is the stage that took most out of me, even more than stage 3. And to say this is no easy claim. There is so much shit on the screen at all times that you can't do the stage on gut reaction alone. You just can't. There's bullets everywhere, weapons appearing that, on Minimalist, is my absolute antichrist. Destroying them means that I have to wait for them to land so I can jump over them, or for them to disappear entirely. So in this case, they work for the enemies by protecting them against me. If you don't map a specific route for this, and I have, you cannot hope to make it through on a whim. The global timer will tolerate absolutely no deviation of any kind. Minimalist or not, no damage or not. The boss is downright legendary to pull off in a challenge like this one. It's such a nightmare that I had to map myself an entire choreography to deal with this. Absolutely none of what you're seeing is gut reaction alone. Absolutely every single frame, every step, every bullet, and every single jump, without fail, is something that I have memorized perfectly. This means that 100% of all my battles against this boss were exactly the same until I figured out how to make it to the end. Memorizing every single input was insane, and to successfully do it after such a chaotic level was something that felt completely vain. The choreography was so specific, so precise that I could do the boss fight without looking at the screen, so long as I knew what buttons to push, when and in what order. Exactly like someone who memorized all the notes for a song in a rhythm game. It was that unnecessarily crazy. This fight, this absolute insanity of a boss battle, for it to look so clean, so immaculate, for it to end so fast and be so precise, demanded that from me. I do not regret doing it, but this is a stage that really took a lot from me. There isn't anything else in the game that comes close to being this crazy and difficult. Even if you consider everything I said about stage 3, the rest of the game is cakewalk now. This is tough, because I genuinely have absolutely nothing to say about stage 6, besides the fact that the boss is almost non-existent. I literally, no joke, did it with my eyes closed. The stage itself is pure evil because the space for movement is sadistically tight and apparently predetermined for you. The stage feels like a 1-minute global timer performance test, a filler that leads to stage 7. It's a rush stage that was a pleasure to rush through and never look back at ever again, except for this commentary. A sad excuse to increase the length of the game without adding anything new or even its own touch. There's genuinely nothing left to be said about this level and boss. I guess I could mention how I've seen it kill multiple attempts at speedruns, because this is one of those stages that can go south faster than you can understand that it's happening. After the absolute self-imposed torture of stage 5, I guess I can take this as a small in-between before I tackle stage 7. Maybe this stage could be used as a breathing room, but it's a weird one at that. Nah, you know what? Fuck this. I can't pretend. This isn't some breathing room. This isn't a good in-between to anything. This is a fucking Run Killer 2000 and a quarter-eating vertical piece of shit. This travesty stole more PBs than I care to count, and me having a stain to put on this level is a big offense on my part, considering I'm usually a sucker for these sort of things. But all I've ever seen this one do was fuck up people's good runs, waste space on the cartridge, and overall adds nothing to anything except bites to memory. Stage 7. Holy shit. This kind of downfall I really don't mind. There's usually a certain comfort in climbing things in video games, such as towers and buildings, etc. But descents always fascinates me when it comes to things like this stage. You can climb down at an overall comfortable speed, sans the alien barriers or whatever those are supposed to be called. The thing here is that things come from behind you to force you downwards, and the camera allows so little to be seen beneath you that a constant sense of dread is present throughout the whole thing. The only thing you can do in situations like these is to try and calm down the pace that the level is trying to force on you. This is one stage where taking your time feels like a justified decision and not a coward's way out of a challenge. Anyone who played Contra 1 could already tell back in the day that they were getting closer to the end of the game, even if this stage right here feels pretty final. This is such a weird blend of fear, anxiety, and hype. I can picture a kid in the 90s making it this far into the game, on his last life, and giving it his best shot to see what the rest of the game looks like. Every life, every continue meant and amounted to something in games like these. And this is a beauty that has been lost throughout the years. Nowadays, people fear dying in games because they'll have to try again from a checkpoint with infinite lives. But things like Contra back in the day said, fuck that. You're fighting for this life and every single accomplishment, kill, and score you've acquired until now. You're not carrying the weight of one singular player life. Your entire run, your entire score is in limbo, and this felt like carrying the weight of the world back in the day. This is why people bothered beating I Wanna Be the Guy on Impossible. This is why people like me do these minimalist, no damage projects. And this is why games like Neo and Dark Souls have become so popular over the years. Because it brings back the feeling that there's something you're fighting for, that you've got everything to lose, and that only pure and true skill can help you fight to protect that. Back to Contra though, this is more of what stood as a proven concept throughout the years. The level is diverse enough to allow each playthrough of it to feel different from the last. This, stage 1, 4, and 8 are what I'm talking about when I'm referencing Contra's glory. And this is only from this one game. I easily, very easily could tackle a list of every stage from each game and list out what stages help define their respective entries and releases. And all of them, without any explanation needed, would be able to demonstrate its qualities on its own, to the point of showcasing just what it is that made Contra so memorable. They are carefully crafted experiences that no two players are likely to experience the same way. In terms of game design, this is an excellent philosophy. This is the last thing Super C is going to throw at us, and as a final trial, it fits perfectly. This is going to sound ironic since this is a Contra game, but this time it's really out to kill you. This is the catharsis where the game officially gives you everything it's got. It's unfortunate that the final boss is at the image of the bosses from the game, and by that I mean a simple mash to win husk, but the level itself is savage enough that it'll give you your money's worth by the time you beat it. An overabundance of enemies that defy description, bullets that fly at high speed, extremely tight, high-pressure jumps that make you question every pixel in front of you, and a ceiling that gives you as little space to maneuver around as possible. Here, I'm taking my time, because I absolutely have to, despite trying my best to go as quickly as I can. This is a very self-explanatory stage, and given everything we've pushed through to get to this point, I think it's time I let the spectacle speak for itself. You know, after saying I wouldn't tackle any more button masher projects, I didn't remember the game being so particularly specific, so strict yet so open and varied. I didn't remember that every single time a stage starts, your experience is most likely to be different every single time, even in speedruns. The amount of enemies that spawn, the game's management of the global timer, and your inputs not happening on the exact same frame on every single run are all part of many factors that determine just how cruel things are going to get. But that's what makes Contra so unique. The game is adrenaline on every single run, and not many games have been able to capture that throughout the years. This concludes a very painful, yet very fun journey. As always, I'm not sure exactly what it is I'll tackle next, but I'm already able to confirm that at least 3 separate projects have been in the works for quite some time now. with each project being just as insane as the other. It's hard for me not to reveal just what it is I've been working on, but one of those projects has the Contra fanbase in mind, with the intention of tackling a more niche and underappreciated title. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope to see you for my next project. Take care. See you around.